In this video, I'm exploring an abandoned payphone. I have been looking for one of these for a long time to do a video on. I finally found one and man was I excited. So here's the history of payphones. Remember payphones, those boxes with the word quote phone unquote sprawled out in white letters that stood on nearly every corner of the county cities. Well, they're barely around, so it's completely understandable if it takes a while to recall. Regardless, they were used for years before cell phones were brought into the forefront of American culture. With the device essentially gone from the face of the earth, we figured we'd take a look at the long journey payphones took from beginning of the greatest invention of its time to ultimately being renewed useless. 1876, you heard of the old age, quote, to the victors go the spoilers, unquote. Well, that's essentially the case with the inventors of the phone. Here's the story according to the Library of Congress. In 1849, Italian immigrant Antonio began developing the original concept of the telephone. Years later, in 1871, he filed a convent announcing his invention but was unable to renew his convent because of money problems. Entered Alexander Graham Bell. You know him, the guy created with the invention. Well, to be fair, Bell did officially patent for the phone in 1876, although technically his lawyer did. Here's where things get even more interesting, though. According to the Library of Congress, Elijah Gray, a professor at Auburn College, applied for a convent the same day as Bell. Unfortunately for Gray, his lawyers didn't make it to the U.S. Patents Office before Bell's lawyer. Gray's lawyer had the 39th submission of the day, and Bell had the 5th. Thus, the telephone was invented, and although it was mostly used by wealthy people for private use, it changed the future. 1889, the first payphone was installed by inventor William Gary, who, believed it or not, also invented a new inflatable chest protector for catchers in baseball a few years before, and developer by George A. Long at a bank in Hartford, Connecticut. As the story goes, Gray came up with the idea after nobody will let him use their phones to call the doctor to help his ailing wife. Unlike current payphones, customers would use the phone would pay after they used it, rather than before. It was essentially an honor system, where after use the user would insert coins and the operator could hear if the right amount was used. 1898, the first, quote, prepay, unquote, station, the Western Electric number 5 coin collector, was installed in Chicago. 1902, there were 81,000 payphones in the country. 1905, the first outdoor coin payphone was installed on a street in Cincinnati. 1950s, glass door booths began replacing that already in use wooden ones. 1957, drive-up payphones were first tested in Mobile, Alabama, and Chicago. 1960, the Bell system installed its millionth payphone. 1966, the quote dial tone first unquote service was introduced. This allowed emergency calls on payphones easier because users didn't have to pay first. 1967, Charles Katz used a public phone booth to send illegal gambling wagers from California to Miami and Boston. When the FBI caught wind of this, they bugged the payphone booth and arrested Katz. He was later convicted but appealed the decision, stating that it violated his Fourth Amendment rights. The Supreme Court later overruled the Court of Appeals in Katz versus United States, extending the Fourth Amendment protection to areas where a person has a, quote, reasonable expectation of privacy, unquote. That made it illegal for law enforcement to tap payphones without a warrant. More on this later. 1973. The history of the payphone wouldn't be complete without mentioning what ultimately led to its demise. The first cell phone call was made in 1973 when Martin Cooper, a senior engineer at Motorola, called a rival telecommunications company. 1983. Fast forward 10 years. The Motorola puts its first cell phone on the market. The behemoth of a device sold for nearly $4,000. The 80s and 90s. Back to the whole Fourth Amendment issue. Ever watch the hit HBO shows, quote, The Wire, unquote? It's been ranked by numerous Republicans as the top three shows of all time. However, this is besides the point. In the show, drug dealers in Baltimore were shown using payphones on the corners of public housing projects to talk business. This was also done in the spontaneous but wasn't used nearly as much to drive the plot. This doesn't just happen on television. Because of the illegalness surrounding payphones usage, drug dealers, gamblers, scammers, etc., were able to use their payphones for their shady business. At least until the authorities obtained a warrant and were able to legally hear anything recorded on the public payphones, would eventually be the center of several public policy plans across the county. Some cities implemented laws that would prohibit payphones in certain areas, and some just pulled payphones out of the corners altogether. 1995. The number of public payphones peaked in America, reaching 2.6 million phones on the streets. 2001. Bell South was the first phone company to announce that it was getting out of the payphone business. 2002. Remember Antonio, the Italian immigrant who fled the first convent for the telephone in the 1870s? Well, he was fully recognized for that by the U.S. House of Representatives. 2007. AT&T announced that it would be leaving the payphone market. 2011. Verizon also jumps ship. 2016. With smartphones taking over and payphones practically becoming non existent, some companies started proposing payphone stations and turning them into Wi Fi hotspots and charging stations. Link NYC was the first to do this on a board scale, replacing over 7,500 payphones in New York City. Thank you for watching my video. Make sure to like the video, don't forget to subscribe, and also hit the notification button so you'll know when new videos get released.